Hi folks, thought I'd come on and give you a bit of an update about the situation here in Australia. You know, Australia is currently in the grips of a firestorm of hellish proportions. There's a mega fire around about the size of Greater Sydney, which is kind of heading for Sydney as I'm sitting here recording this. We're about to enter into a massive heat wave this week, right on cue. And we are in the grips of probably the worst drought that we've ever seen in this country. The line that's being fed to the people that is the cause of this situation that we're having here is climate change and global warming. This is what is being pushed by the government and the media. But such is not the case, folks. The reality is that this situation in Australia has been deliberately manufactured by government, and I'm going to show you why. You know, the thing is, in this country, the river systems are drying up. The creek out the front of my house here has dried up. All of the creeks in the area have dried up. I've been speaking to people at the talk I did on the Gold Coast day before yesterday. Someone even said there that the creeks in Bundaberg are drying up as well. And people are waiting for the rains to come, thinking that when the rains come, it's going to fill the creeks and we're going to be back out of our water-deprived situation. But such is not the case, folks, because all of the creeks around here are spring-fed. All of these creeks should be permanent, but they've stopped flowing because the water has stopped flowing from Northern Territory. The Great Artesian Basin that supplies this country with water has stopped sending water out to the other aquifers because, as I said, the water stopped flowing in the Northern Territory. The way it works in this country, you see this map I've got here of Australia. We have this area up here. We have massive monsoons come across this area, and it feeds this region here called the Great Artesian Basin, and that feeds the creeks and the river systems and all the other aquifers. And the seepage as the rivers come down out to the other areas here, the seepage from those rivers fills the aquifers, and this is what brings water to the region I live, which is around here. And all the coastal regions. It's all from the aquifers in the Great Artesian Basin, from the monsoon troughs that come up in the north. And this happens every year like clockwork, and it happened last year as well. There's no reason the Great Artesian Basin should be out of water. There's no reason that the creeks around here should be drying up, irrespective of how little rain we've had, because these creeks have always been permanent. These rivers have always been permanent. The Murray-Darling Basin has always flowed. And would it surprise people to know that right now the Murray River is in flood, but we're just not getting the water down here? In fact, the Murray River has been so much in flood that it's been spilling over the banks of the river and destroying the forests on either side of the river, because these forests are not used to unusual amounts of water, the unusual amounts of water that they're getting. And yet none of the farmlands below south of this area are getting the water because all of the water is being siphoned off. The Murray River is in flood because the water is being channeled down to dams that are privately owned, that are owned by mega agricultural companies and mega mining companies, and they're using this water for private reasons and for their private uses. And this is water, folks, and it's not anything that they have the right to do. And I'll show you a video now. There's a channel you should subscribe to as well if you're an Australian. It's called Liability Mate. These guys are really doing what they can to make a difference, folks, and bring a lot of very, very much needed information to the Australian public, so get onto that channel as well. But have a look at this video that was put up on that channel now, and I'll show you what's going on and why the creeks are dry. Well, one of the reasons the creeks are dry anyway. Have a look at this. It's only 1 minute and 4 seconds, and I'll put a link below. Sorry folks, I got the camera in the wrong spot. I'll put a link below so that anything that I talk about on the video here today, you can just check below and you'll see a link to it there, and you can check out what's going on there. And check this out. What am I doing? There we go.
1,500 kilometres of the greatest river system is empty. And it's not drought. Floodplain harvesting means where there was floodplains, they kill all the trees, level it off, and they put a big embankment to stop the water actually getting into the river. And they call that harvesting. I'm calling that rape of a river.
Welcome to what's left of the Darling River.
Come and see it. Come and bring your kids fishing. Let them walk up and down this river and find 50 million dead mussels, yabbies, emus, roos, everything. The whole ecosystem has collapsed, and the trees, they're just dying. See behind us some of the red gums that are hanging on. How long for? Why am I the only live thing when everything else is dead? We've got to make change in this country. Australians have to wake up and fight.
So that's what's going on, folks. That's what's going on with the rhythm systems in this country. That's why there's no water in the river systems. And there's also this, private dams that are being built for mega agro companies. At least 20 to 30 of these dams in the Murray-Darling Basin region, you know, and the taxpayer paid for them as well. We actually paid for these dams that are being used to steal our water, ladies and gentlemen. That's what is happening. There's another video that you should watch that I'll put a link below called Corruption Fraud Australia. Just watch this. I'll put links below. And you've got to understand how they're doing this, folks, what they're doing as well. I mean, there's so much stuff that's happening. Like I said, there's a mega fire that's heading for Sydney at the moment. And I've been told by people that live in areas where these fires have been through, that what's happening, I mean, after the fire goes through, the council is coming in and they're cutting down any trees that are left. They're saying they're cutting them down because they're a fire hazard. Now, this is a place that the fire has already gone through, but they're just going through and making sure there is no life left. They're cutting all the trees down that have survived the fire. Think about that one, folks. That's what they're doing. You've got Scott Morrison rejecting calls for more assistance to firefighters and selling our water off at the same time while they're doing this, folks. And now they're talking about even evacuating towns because they're running out of water. This has all been done deliberately. And it isn't just because of these dams and because of the floodplain harvesting that's going on as well. Have a look at this in Australia here. You look up here where the Great Artesian Basin is and where the water catchment areas are. Have a look up here. There's an area here called Arnold. I think it's a station called Arnold. Have a look at these lines on this map here. Have a look at this. See all these roads through here. You see all this? Can you see all of these points, all these corners where there's stuff going on? Have a look through here. Look at all this. What is all this? Look down through here. All these lines, all these things going on. And you get down here, and what do you see? Look through here. You see this? You see all of this stuff? You see this? All of this. These are frack wells, folks. These are coal seam gas wells. This goes on. Look at this. Look at this. These frack wells. These are all frack wells. This whole area where our water catchment is full of frack wells, which is a lot of what the water that's being stored in these dams is being used for. And it just keeps going. You go up here, look, more frack wells. Frack wells. Fracking wells. Have a look at Western Australia, the Nullarbor Plain. Have a look at the Nullarbor. Look at this. Frack wells. Coal seam gas frack wells all over the country. Go up to Western Australia here, up to where the mine is near Tom Price. Tom Price mine is around here somewhere. There's Tom Price, there's the mine. That's a lovely sight on the landscape, isn't it? Go down here, and what do you see? Frack wells, frack wells, fracking wells, fracking well pads. Look at this, folks. It takes around about somewhere between 100 or 1.5 and 16 million gallons of water per well to run a frack well. These frack wells use that much water, folks, and there are 43,000 frack wells in Australia that have been done by our government. While they're doing this floodplain harvesting and while they are allowing people to create private dams with taxpayer money and use all of our water for all of these operations. And we're sitting here downstream, and they're saying they may have to evacuate towns because they may run out of water. You know, considering evacuating up to 90 towns if they run out of water. They're running out of water because the government has sold the water. That's the problem, folks. And look at this. They're talking about bringing in the Defence Force to help battle climate change. And they're talking about moving people out of towns. So you can see what's going on here, folks. They're going to bring in the Australian Federal Police to evacuate people from dangerous areas that may be prone to fire, and they're going to bring in the Defence Force to occupy those areas to stop people returning to their homes. This is what is planned, and it's all planned by them, and it's all being done by them. And I've got this document here as well that was sent to me. It's a draft yet. It hasn't been released yet. This is the strategic planning statement for the Hawkesbury region from 2017 to 2040. It's up to the next 70 years, or the next 20 years they want to do this, folks. It all looks really wonderful, you know, like they're really trying to help us. Community strategic plan, development control, environmental planning, Greater Sydney Commission, all of this sort of stuff. It all sounds wonderful, looks wonderful. The presentation is just beautiful, isn't it? And you've got these different community engagements and purpose of strategic planning statement and infrastructure collaboration, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, it all sounds good. You look at this, you know, peacocks, folks. Peacocks in the yard. The vision based on the values of the Hawkesbury Community Strategic Plan 2017 to 2036, how this vision gives effect to the Greater Sydney Commission's Greater Sydney Region Plan and Western District Plan based on local characteristics and opportunities. You know, you can see what's going on here. I don't know whether I can put a link to this document below or not. Like I said, it's been leaked to me. It hasn't actually been released yet. And I don't really know whether there might be anything in the document to identify the person who leaked it to me. But anyway, we go down here and we get to the plans they have, the strategic plans. Introduction, the different plans they have. We get down to page 69, interesting number. Down to page 69, and it starts talking about that wonderful word that they like to use, sustainability. Sounds great, doesn't it? And it looks so wonderful. Yes, they want to create this type of environment for us. Aren't we lucky? It talks about in here what they want to do, and it mentions protect areas of high environmental value and significance. Commit to urgent action to respond to global climate emergency. Sounds ominous, doesn't it? Look down here a little bit further, and what it says is a couple of really interesting lines down here. It all looks really wonderful. So they want to protect the koalas. Aren't we lucky? And this is before they've even announced then that, you know, but they want to evacuate possibly 90 homes in New South Wales. You know, before they announced that, I got sent this document a few weeks ago. I just haven't brought it to your attention yet. But this document hasn't been released yet, like I'm saying, and they're already saying that they wish to evacuate homes. So it says here, new developments will be restricted in areas vulnerable to natural hazards. Here the risk to life and property is high. Develop specific natural hazard chapters to include planning controls to protect and mitigate development in areas prone to natural hazards. Maintain environmentally sensitive places in their natural condition through protection from encroachment by sensitive land uses. Agenda 21, folks. See, what they're doing with these fires now is they're driving everybody out of the country. And soon, even if you've got a place like where I live here now, it'll be too far out of town. You're in a fire-prone area. The people who own this property won't be able to afford the insurance on their house that will be required to live here. And if they create a hard time about it, well, the Australian Federal Police will simply remove them as being a place that's being a hazard to their health due to climate change, and the military will occupy the area and keep people from returning to their homes. This is what they're planning, folks, and they're showing the world how the actions are going to be run, and this is what you can expect to see in most of your countries. Another action here, commit to and champion the global warming reversal solutions through council policies and initiatives. Global warming reversal strategies incorporated into councils, policies and strategies. So it's council. You know, not state government, not federal government, but council. The local councils in Australia all receive their orders from the Municipality Association, which receives its orders directly from the United Nations. This is Agenda 21. That's what's going on here, folks. So this is planned. They want to burn the place out, remove it of our water, and make it impossible to live in these areas and push us all into the city. And this drought is being manufactured. And the people of Australia, you know, we're in a really delicate situation at the moment, because really the only way we can get out of this situation and combat this so-called drought that we're facing is to take strong action by the population to reverse this and go and release this water, or to implore the Queen to exercise her power. Isn't that an ironic situation? I mean, how much do I trust the Queen? And yet the Queen could actually fix this situation, because the situation we've got here in Australia, as has been pointed out by so many people, and again I'll put links below, and go to the channel Liability Made and check out the interviews they've done with Senator Rob Culleton, who has shown you that this government is invalid. The Australian government is invalid. It's a corporate entity. And look at the work of Wayne Glue, who's been working to try to expose this government. You know, so what we've got here is a situation where the Queen could actually intervene and say, well, okay, you guys have actually stolen this country from the Crown, because they have. And if you want confirmation of that, folks, there's two entities at work here. There's the Australian Commonwealth Government, and there's the Commonwealth Government of Australia. Two different names, two different entities. One has a lion and a unicorn on its coat of arms. The other has a kangaroo and an emu on its coat of arms. Probably for the kangaroo courts that they run. But that one is an invalid entity. It's a corporate entity, and you owe no allegiance to that corporate entity. And it is this corporate entity who has created the legislation saying they can own water when they can't own water. If any politician has legislated that he owns water, then he's in abuse of office. If he's legislated that anybody owns water, he's in abuse of office. He's delegated himself powers that are not entitled to him by the office that he holds. That is abuse of office. That is the most serious crime a politician can commit. So any of the legislation which is restricting the use of the water that is held in these private dams and the water that is held in this floodplain harvesting is invalid, because this government is invalid. It's been invalid ever since Bob Hawke introduced the Australia Act in 1973. So that's the situation that we're in, folks. So you can go and release the water from these dams, and if you're an Australian, it is your duty to release the water from these dams back into the river system. If there's legislation claiming you can't, that you're breaking the law by doing so, no, you are not, because it is not a law, because it was not put in place by a government that has any validity at all. And that's the situation that we're in, folks. And if the Queen isn't going to intervene and take control of these criminals masquerading as government with scummo at the head of them at the moment in Canberra, then we have to take the situation into our own hands and do our duty as Australians under our Constitution and release this water back into the river system, because this drought has been manufactured. And we're running out of water here, folks. We're not going to have any water in our communities, and you can't survive without water. So if there's mining companies claim they have a right to the water because they bought it, and if we take it back, then the Australian government and the Australian people will owe them all this money, well, no, we won't, because the con man who sold them the water was specifically that. He was a con man. It was someone from this group of career criminals, these racketeers masquerading as the Australian government, who conned someone from a foreign company into thinking they could actually buy water from them, when they can't, because you can't sell water, because you can't own water. So any corporate company from overseas who thinks they want to sue the Australian government, well, no, you can't sue the Australian government. What you can do is dig up the sociopath, the criminal, the con man who made the deal with you, which would be Malcolm Turdfall, or Scott Morrison, or Barnaby Joyce, who ran off with 80 million on some water deal that ended up getting flushed out to the ocean and no one can use it because someone wrote on paper that it's somebody else owns it. I mean, what is this shit, folks? We're in dire straits in this country, and the people of this country need to wake up to themselves and do something about this situation, because this can't be tolerated. And we're in a situation now where we have to take positive action and out these criminals who are masquerading as government and reclaim this water, or we have to die. That's the choice we've got, folks. Release the water or die. It's your decision. This drought is not because of climate change. It's not because of global warming. It's because of the actions of the criminal cabal masquerading as the federal government that has set up shop in Canberra and built that big fence around themselves so we can't go in and call them out for what they are. And that's exactly what needs to happen, folks. So if you're a farmer and you need water, Take the water you need. And if there's a dam in the area that is holding that water back from the river, it's your duty to release that dam. And the people of Australia will stand with you in doing so, because the politicians that pretended to be able to sell it to people are completely out of line. These foreign companies are being conned by racketeers masquerading as government. And they can arrest these people themselves, take them back to their own country and try them under their own laws for being a con man. Because that's all ScoMo is a con man. He's conning you that he's the Prime Minister. He's not the Prime Minister. He's the head of a corporate entity. He's the CEO of a corporation masquerading as government, which is selling this nation out from underneath the people and has manufactured this drought deliberately. So yeah, that's about all I have to say on this for today, folks. But if you're an Australian, you need to go and look at this, and you need to investigate this situation, and you need to share this video with your friends, and you need to call these politicians out for what they are and stop doing what these people tell you, because they're not your friends, they're not even your government, they're just a bunch of criminals. Have a nice day. In Lakesh.